Man, oh man, on Talking with Kevin and Son, you talk about bringing it. I got Dave Collier here. We just did an interview. Dave,
Hi, I'm Dave Collier. I just had a wonderful interview. I talked about surviving intimate partner violence, my experience over 20 years. I hope that you'll tune in. I'd love you to listen and watch the video. Thank you.
welcome to another edition of Talking with WIT Kevin and Son, featuring people like my guest today that you should know. Hi, I'm Kevin McLemore. I am your show host, four-time published author, wordsmith, and mindset messenger. This episode is brought to you by RMK Productions and the 10 United Podcast Network. Our mission is to give you power in your voice, inspire, share stories, experience, and perspectives using the framework of teaching, learning, and modeling. Our purpose is simple, folks. It's hope. HOPE, helping other people every single day. Now listen up. Whatever your objective, successful people create a framework around their day-to-day lives that not only enhance theirs, but many times they pour into others. Today's conversation may be tough for some, especially men, to handle. For us that are not emotionally connected, this story is a story that needs to be told. Today's guest is an open and honest expert of intimate partner violence from a survivor's point of view. Our guest is a two-time published author, international speaker on the topic of intimate partner violence. Our guest also is passionate about parental alienation, if I said that right, PTSD, which I know from personal experience, and issues facing men and youth and their mental health. Our guest will guide us to how we can become masterful communicators in our own mental health. In my opinion, today's guest is one of the greatest assets we have for men. He is a true trailblazer, a visionary, a champion of a truth that needs to be told. So without any further ado, let me welcome to the show a good friend, author, professional consultant, Mr. David Collier. Welcome to Talking with Kevin and Son. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing good. Thank you. I don't know if I can live up to that introduction, but I'll try.
Well, that's all we can do is try, but that's your bio. If you Google who you are, a couple books pop up and we'll talk about that. But I want the guests to get a chance to know who you are. I know I only kind of skimmed through your bio. It is much deeper than that. The people, if you guys want to do a deep dive into Dave's background, you can go to dbcollier.com and Google him and go from there. But otherwise, right now, we're just going to sit back and we are going to um, learn about a story that needs to be told, especially for men and our own mental health. We live in an environment or in a society or a culture that holds a man to a different standard than anybody else. All right. We are judged, we are criticized, and we are held accountable for things that basically we shouldn't be held accountable for. So our legal system puts into the conversation of a man that holds him to a standard that's different from the story we're about to tell. So before we talk about why we have you on this show, when we talk about mental health and we talk about, I'm going to say domestic abuse coming from a female to a male on how you dealt with your story, I need to ask you this. All right. You're in a thriving relationship now. The story that we're about to tell, we'll have a conversation about the prelude, your relationship with your kids, and how you overcame it. But if I were to go back and ask you, the one person before all of this began, before your first marriage, of who was the biggest influence on you, and were to ask you if that person was able to speak on this show today to tell us who David Collier is, what would he say? But first, let's find out who that person that impacted your life the most is.
Wow, you're gonna be crying early. The the person that impacted me the most and my siblings the most was my dad's my dad's mother. Um, she was she was a saint. She was the gentlest, kindest person. Um, and when she passed in the early 80s, I asked a friend, why did she make such a big impact? And my friend said, well, it's because she didn't have a mean bone in her body. And you just were enveloped in love and caring from her. And so I often think about living up to that.
What do you
Yeah.
think, seeing you now and being successful and coming on the other side of what you had to go through, what do you think that she would have to say if she was telling me your story?
Oh, I think she'd be amazed at what I came through. Um, the little kid that I would lie on her lap and ask her to rub my back, and she'd get tired of doing it all the time, but she'd continue to do it. Grew up to be this man that is like a dog with a bone when I have something that I'm passionate about. Um, and I think if I was able to talk to her, I think I'd ask her why, because she was very spiritual and religious, and why she thinks I went through all this. I have my own feelings now.
Yeah, it's amazing. Little girls, and I hope I don't get thrashed for me prefacing what I'm about to say, or young women all dream about the Cinderella life, finding Prince Charming, living in that beautiful house with a big yard, perfect kids, going to the right schools, having the perfect husband, and that beautiful day, their wedding day. Us men, we wake up and we're told to be tough. Don't cry. To go out there and provide. To go out and conquer the world. You got to have greatness within you. All of those wonderful things. But we're never told that it's okay to be emotional. We're not protected from outside sources or alien sources that are totally unaware. When I bring up the word narcissist, normally if I had to put a picture and ask 100 people to put a picture on there, chances are it will be a male photograph. But you went through a marriage, and I'll let you talk about it. And the reason why we're having this discussion right now, you had two beautiful children out of it. We're going to talk
Yeah.
about parental resilience and how your story tears not only a family apart, but it doesn't set up a great foundation for your children to build on their life because they're not ready for this. So, why are we having this conversation today? Tell us this story.
Oh, well, I grew up in such a loving household. Like there was no arguing. I always felt safe, and my mother was a stay-at-home mom. Um, and yeah, so there was that consistency, and we each had each other's back. There was no toxicity in the family. It was pretty. When I look back now, after all I know, it was a gift to be in that family. I was adopted. I don't know why I was chosen for that family, but um, yeah, it was a gift. Um, so since my work in 1995 with abused kids, it's like I had no idea what was happening in other families. I was bubble wrapped, and I feel that was something I can share with these kids that don't know anything but a toxic family life, that have been abused, that life can be amazing. It doesn't have to be like this. You can change it for your own kids. You can change it from this day forward for yourself. Um, so I was a typical teenager racing cars, um, street racing, and my dad and I worked on a 68 Mustang together to get on the road for my high school graduation. And I wasn't thinking too far ahead in the future about life or whatever. And um, just kind of living one day to the next, having fun, and had the odd relationship that worked. Some were better than others. I think I'd been out of relationship for a few years when 1996, I had been at a friend's and we were on the internet with a new uh, chat program. And we were taking turns talking to people. And I began talking to this girl who actually just lived down the street, unbeknownst, from where we were chatting from. And so we met up for dinner, and I didn't think there was anything as a red flag early on. It took a while. Still in the trust building phase. There were some lies, and
Uh, let me interrupt you for this. I just want to paint a picture. I think you're a little bit within my age range. At that time, I believe, and I'm going to tell my audience, Dave Collier is a really good looking man. He's kind. He is generous. And so back in our day, there was no such thing as a red flag or a deal breaker. We were just happy that a girl liked us. And
yes.
he shows up with his Shelby Mustang shirt on, talking about the love of his cars, and now he's entering a love of his life. So now you've got this very beautiful woman, okay, that you're into. You meet her. What was your opening line in order to get her to be the one for right now?
Oh man. Um, I don't know because I wasn't too interested in a long-term relationship still. I was going to college at the time, and so thinking back, there was some love bombing there from her, and so she was buying expensive gifts for me and always coming to see me in college, and um, she put on, I wouldn't say she put on, she made me believe she was almost a mirror image of myself, what I would be looking for in the perfect mate. Um,
And so she
After
swept you
meeting her,
off your feet. She swept you off your
yeah,
feet.
pretty much, yeah. And meeting her family, it was different than my family. There was not that loving, trusting family that I had. Um, I don't want to disparage them, but there was some toxicity in the family. Now, my ex-wife, when I said, I think your dad's a narcissist, she says, "Oh, absolutely." So she agrees with that he was a narcissist. Um, so we dated for, oh boy, 4 years, I guess, before we got married, 3.5 years. In 2000, we got married, and by this point, there was enough red flags that, and the abuse actually increased, the intensity, duration, frequency of the abuse.
Well, let me back up so we can get
Sure.
our listeners right on board with the story that you're telling. So early on in the story, you had met her parents, and there were some things that were normally warning signs. And we all get into these relationships that, we see the parents, but the children of the parents, which is the people that we date, show us a different picture. All right.
Mhm.
Just like a guy does, the first 6 months is a setup. And then after 6 months, we become who we really are. And I think most women are the same way because we want to put our best foot forward. So evidently she wowed you. Okay. She bought you nice gifts. You had warm, intimate evenings and great conversations. And along the way, let me make sure I got this picture. There were some things that made a smooth road kind of bumpy. And because that you had eyes wide open and you were looking at how beautiful she was and how perfect of a couple, you overlooked some of the things that most of us would be considered. red flags or warning signs, or we should just run. But you being the trooper that you are, you stayed in it for the long haul. So one day you got up, you dropped down to one knee, and you did what?
I asked her to marry me at her family reunion. Um, yeah, I asked her parents, her father actually, for permission, and then asked her to marry me. And she was very excited about it. I think she started planning the wedding fairly quickly. Um, and she said, "Well, don't expect my parents to pay for the wedding." And so I ended up funding that. Um, and she said oh, it was our wedding night that we were sitting in the hot tub after the ceremony. She had said to me, "I've been told I can be controlling. If you find I'm controlling, let me know." Well, years later, when I got the courage to tell her she's controlling, she just blew up. Like, how dare I say that she's controlling?
Now, let me ask this question. All right. When you said a year after, what are some of the signs that from a female to a male that you would look at being controlling? What did she do?
Uh, well, she tried to take control of the finances covertly and overtly, spending us into it became technically bankrupt for years at the end of the marriage because she would hide getting credit cards and hide taking money out. One of the early signs was that she would take cash back out from the stores, and I would ask where the receipt was to find out, how much she'd taken out. And she said, "Oh, I've lost it." So she lost the receipt from the store across the street to the time she got home. Um, and it was just that need to be able to control the money and
So,
control. Sorry.
so let me ask this. So, and the reason why I'm asking this question is because most men that are going to be listening to this conversation normally say, "Well, I control the household funds." Um, and I know with me, I look at it as a partnership. I got nothing to hide. Have a bank account. She has her money. I have my own money. We have conversations regarding you could spend up to this amount. Otherwise, we have a family conversation about how money is going to be. At any time that were there any conversations and laying out how this marriage is going to work, how you deal with me as a man, how I'm going to deal with you as a woman before you said I do? Did you guys have this conversation, or just were you starry-eyed, just said I do, and thought you're going to live happily ever after?
I don't think there's much conversation. I booked many couple counselor sessions with different counselors to have her unpack what she was carrying around from her childhood, she had told me, and what she was bringing into the relationship. The one time we had left, but she was never emotionally involved while we were in counseling. She didn't want to change. The one counseling session we left, she said to me, "I swear I wasn't going to talk about myself." Well, okay, I'll talk about myself, but I'm not the only one in the partnership here. Um, and there was things like there was one time at her parents when her parents and my ex and I sitting in the dining room just finishing up supper. I had to go to the bathroom, so I took my plate and cup and put it in the dishwasher and went to the bathroom. I came out. A few minutes later, she directs me into the bedroom. She wanted to talk to me, and I said, "So what's up?" She said, "Don't you ever do that again. Don't you ever clear your place setting without anybody else's." It was like, okay, I didn't know anybody else was finished. And by the way, I cleared mine up so they wouldn't have to do it. Um, And there was never any um, taking back her anger towards me. There was never any apologizing. When I confronted her about things she would eventually tell my kids, she would say, "Oh, that's just something I said out of anger towards the kids about me," which led to parental alienation. But even on our wedding day, I remember before the ceremony thinking something's not off. Or sorry, something is off. But I don't want to let all these people down. Um, I wish I had the foresight to know what was going to happen over the next 20 years.
Well,
Um,
I think we all feel that way. That's been through it once. Some of us have been through it twice, and some of us are career spouses and go through it three or four times. But let me ask you this, because you're a smart man. I know you are.
thanks.
Um, did you see what are some of the signs? Because most people don't know until they're way in it that they are in an abusive relationship with a female versus a man. And sometimes people, especially a female narcissist, they take your silence and your kindness as a weakness because you give me the impression that you don't like confrontation. And when you do, and I could be wrong.
No,
All right.
no, I confront things when I have to. Yeah, ask anybody at work.
Okay. Well, I'm talking about with your spouse. Work's easy
Yes,
because you can always get another job.
yes, yeah, I agree. I'm not because I didn't grow up around parents or siblings confronting each other in anger or arguing. Um, that just wasn't what I knew.
And the reason why I'm asking you this, because I'm a victim of it, because I always put someone else's feelings before mine. And I always, until now, and I read a book called Known Honesty. Um, excuse me. I often, because, my ex would be having a bad day. She was overwhelmed by some things, and I always said the timing of the conversation that I may be having may not be right, but sometimes the right time never comes about, so the conversation never happens. And you're always put off with your feelings, expecting that one day she's going to wake up and recognize yours. But in the case of a narcissist, does she withhold um, physical relationships from you? Does she keep a scorecard as to what she does and what you don't do around the house? Does she belittle you in front of your children? Does she remind you of what you're not and what you could be?
Yeah, absolutely. And she will ignore what I am doing. Like I could work two or three jobs at the same time, so I'm providing for the kids for her spending. But in the separation, she's saying, "Oh, he's had all these jobs." Well, it's because there's some of them were short term during that full time work, so that I could pay extra money in towards all the bills. Um, but yeah, I don't have them in front of me, but there is nine attributes in the DSM-5 for narcissistic personality disorder.
Let's talk about
One,
one or two of them.
well, one of them is empathy, not having any empathy. I've never seen a person with no empathy before. Um, I realize now I was married to one for 20 years. Dur when my parents died, never any empathy. She could pretend she has sympathy outside of the house. She was a different person inside the house than she was outside the house. She was all sunshine and rainbows outside the house. Um, and I remember the day that my dad passed away. I came home. I was cooking something on the barbecue, and I had a loaf of buns in my hand, and I was just beating against the barbecue. And she came out looking at me very judgmental. And I said, "Don't even say anything," because I know that she was going to criticize me for letting out my anger that my dad had passed away. There was no empathy towards that. Um, and no understanding about how her words affect others. There was one day my youngest was on the soccer field, and my youngest would get embarrassed easily and look over and give mom a dirty look when their mom would be yelling across the field. And finally I said, you know, you're embarrassing them. She says, I don't care. That's exactly it. You don't care. You just want to look like the encouraging parent. You don't care about the child that it's embarrassing. Um, it's there's so many times like that. Well, one was when I was supporting a teenage boy in the hospital, and I said when I started that support that I would probably be there on the day that he was going to die. And sure enough, I was. I came home and tried to write a eulogy for the funeral, and I'm just bawling. And I said, my ex was in the living room with me, and I said, okay, can you listen to what I have written? And she says, well, I got things to do. Like she didn't care what I was going through. Um, there was actions and talk behind my back with her family and trying to isolate the kids from me. Um, and a lot of this I learned when she had left, she had stayed logged in on a tablet when we had separated. The tablet was mine, and I saw all these conversations. Don't tell Dave, and I don't know what she was trying to organize, but um, so yeah, when I think of a narcissist, I would say yeah, no empathy. Everything is about them, and truly they live with a lot of shame. It's a covert narcissist is not this grandiose person that portrays this confident person. Well, both covert and overt are truly ashamed of who they are. Um, and so there's never any um, satisfying um, until they deal with what's in their past that's affecting them.
Yeah, I
Uh,
um I, I see what you're saying, but let me ask you this. All right. This behavior didn't just appear overnight. This has been something that had been ongoing through your courtship, ongoing through your wedding day. And at what point in your life or the years that you've been married did a red flag go off in your head, a red light go off in your head that says, I'm underwater and I'm drowning?
I would say the one I thought about today was when I was standing in the house with my ex. We were having a conversation. It wasn't even an argument. And I realized that she was saying things to try and trigger me to get anger. And that's called reactive abuse. Um, so there's a term called gray rocking where you can learn just to not let it bother you, give no reaction, and because that's exactly what they want. And I did that, and that's when her mental health went down severely because she had lost control of that. And then I realized how much she was doing that in front of people, in front of the neighbors, um, in front of her friends, in front of the children to try and provoke a reaction out of me. And there was many things that kind of came up at the same time. The loss of my parents, I felt I'm the captain of my own ship now. I don't have to try and get my parents' approval to leave this marriage. Um, but um, sorry, I'm
That's
I
okay.
forgot where I was going.
I'll go on to the next question. Was there any point, and the reason why I'm asking these questions is because I'm pulling a story in my mind from a family member that went through the same process, and it took this young man years, and I to finally free himself or separate himself from his situation. All right. So the first thing he did after saying he couldn't take it anymore, he started fighting back.
Are you still
All
there?
right.
You've frozen up.
All right.
Oh, you're
Can
back.
you hear me?
Oh,
All right.
there we go.
Oh, all right. So the first thing he did is that he started to say, I'm a man. I'm going to defend myself. All right. And so he stood up to her. All right. And what happens when you stand up to a bully? The bully normally dominates you because at the end, you have that moment of gladiator, and then the reality is that you're facing a warrior, and there's a different conversation when a gladiator faces a warrior. The warrior normally trumps the gladiator. So, knowing from his experience, and this is a conversation I had. I said, there's basically four things in that I can tell you, four words that I'm going to tell you that will change your life, and I'll explain each one of them. The first is discuss. All right. And he goes, well, what does that mean? I said, discuss this when you get to a point that you say enough is enough. I'm no longer going to live that way. I'm getting tired of getting kicked in my face, mistreated, and whatever. The second point is decision. So after you get to a point that you no longer want to be in this place anymore, which you did, and that's the reason why we're here, you make a decision. You either write a book, you get out of the relationship, you sit in front of a judge and said enough is enough, or you make the worst decision that one bully decides to attack another bully, and then the system takes control. And whereas a woman can lay a hand on a man, but if a man defends himself, he ends up in court. He has to go through domestic abuse training, and that happens in most of the states. And if the shoe was on the other foot, no woman is ever held accountable for that. All right, because no
No.
one ever believes a woman's going to ever trump a man. And if you watch the UFC, I can tell you, there's a bunch of women that will beat the crap out of most men on this planet. So it is physically possible. The third is desire. What do you really want out of life? What do you want? If you want to be in a happy, stable relationship the way that you are right now, then you start to make plans to either exit that situation and start anew and not carry over some of the baggage into your new relationship. And then the last part that I told this young man is to resolve. Forget about the road that you had traveled and stay focused on the road that you're on. You can't change history. You can't change the behavior of an individual. But what you do have control over is how you react to the things that you're faced with today. So knowing this and giving you this four things, you have children, and they probably witnessed some of this. How did you protect your children? And then coming out of, I'm going to fast forward, you are out of that relationship and you're currently thriving into a new relationship. You have two children. How did you come out of that relationship, and what conversations does a father that has lived in a marriage or a life where there is either verbal or physical domestic abuse coming from a female to a male? How do you have that conversation with your children? I know it's hard for a man's son to have this conversation, but our children learn by example. We train our daughters to be the way that we are. Okay, we train our sons to be the way that we are, and then we leave them to the responsibility of changing what they've learned, and they exercise and they practice what they've learned on other people, total strangers. Sitting down with your kids today. All right. Can you describe to us the relationship that you have with your kids present day? If you don't mind, if this is a trigger, we won't talk about it.
Oh, no, I'm an open book. I have two children. One is, I would say, pretty much alienated. She believe, sorry. my oldest believes that what mom has said is the way things are. And I know my oldest feels sorry for mom because of the way mom is. My youngest, I have the best relationship with, and that all came about because I began working in the school system just at the beginning of COVID. And so my youngest was struggling in school, and I thought I got to transfer to this school at my youngest and find out why they're struggling. And through um, day in, day out, my youngest seeing who I was, um, I think they realized where the lies were coming from about what happened in the relationship. I tried to shield the kids about what was happening. It didn't help. And of course, when they're getting one side of the story and then another side of the story comes in, they don't want to get caught in the middle of that. Because I did get to the point where I felt like I should defend myself against all these lies. And the slander started probably before I left the marriage. Um, but yeah, I've got one really good relationship and one we'll see. Time will tell. And you know, it came so naturally for me to be a father. That's what breaks my heart. And uh, in the first 6 months out of that relationship, I couldn't see my kids day to day, and that killed me. And well, actually, almost did kill me because I tried taking my life that year because of it. But I woke up the next day thinking, how dare I try and take my kid's father away from them over lies? They're never going to know who I am if they're just being told one side of the story. And from that day on, I've been driven to get my message out about not only males being abusers, but also females. Uh, it is tough not having both my kids around, uh, and I have to kind of compartmentalize it for now and move on with what I have now.
Let me ask you this. Was your the dysfunction within your last marriage, was the relationship emotional and verbal abuse, or was it physical, emotional, and verbal abuse? And did you play a part in supporting that emotional, verbal, and physical abuse?
I would say I played a part in supporting it in the fact that I always kept thinking in the back of my head, okay, she's been sent to a trauma counselor. Maybe she will try and take some ownership and find out why she's acting like this. And I tried to be, I tried to give my kids what I had growing up rather than this chaos that was going on in the house. Um, sorry,
No, that's okay. And the reason why I'm asking this question again, I've taken this from a page of a personal conversation with someone near and dear to me, and taking the page from this. And the reason why I'm asking this is because I want to make sure that when this video is released, that both male and female, they understand that this swings both ways. If if your female partner is verbally abusive to you, and you return the favor by being equally as verbally abusive, this conversation of being a narcissist is a conversation that both parties are guilty of. If both parties are laying hands on each other in these confrontations, it doesn't make a difference who's first or who's second. It's the fact that when your children witness this, your children are small versions of you, and the lessons in life that they learn and how to deal with resolving issues are taught by the examples that are in the house, is that you're sharing both of them. And I say this to kids or children that are part of this and have taken sides or drawn a line, is that it is part of human behavior to put yourself in the best light of an uncomfortable conversation. It is very rare that one person will basically come out and says, this is how it is. And what my advice to any parent, if you're having issues between the two adults, do not let the kids be pawns in your conflict. Don't let your kids be in the leverage of why you want to win an argument or stand above your spouse, be it male or female. So I'm taking it very neutral. And I will say this to any child. We all need our moms and we all need our dads. We're all going to meet a day when mom and dad's life is going to come to an end. Do you want to be that child that's standing over the coffin of one of your parents and says, I wish I could have had a relationship or whatever? If the parents don't get along and they separate, you as a young adult, you have the perfect opportunity to create the perfect relationship with each of your parents. Even though the parents couldn't get along, it does not um, bode well for you to pass on the anger or the damage that's done from either parent onto that parent because you're now entering that space as a child of a practicing narcissist. You're just using your parents as a punching bag, be it right or wrong, unless your parents were physically abusing their partner. And that's the reason why I asked, if your wife was physically abusing you, did you retaliate? And the reason why I'm asking this is because the young man's story that I'm keeping his name out of it is because when he got to a point that he had his back against the wall and he grabbed her, her first thing was, let me call the cops. And they had him arrested, even though 24 hours after she cooled off, she said he never put his hands on her. But in California, it's because of OJ. As soon as a male puts his hands on anyone, it automatically puts you in a situation that you're going to get jail time. So I don't know what it's like in Canada where you hail from. And that's the reason why I gave you a little moment to kind of get yourself together because I want people to be educated because you teach this. And
Yeah,
so,
sorry, I'm coming back to a couple points now that I forgot I meant to get to. Um, I was never physically abusive toward my ex. There was hardly any physical contact for many years there. Um, so it was in the summer after I left. It was April, May 1st, 2019 that I left. In that summer, I remember I'd come over to visit the kids once, and never did I fear for my safety physically, but I was in the kitchen and my kids were in the other room. I was talking with my ex, and she was clearly angry at me. And she made a fist and leaned in towards me, and I hightailed it behind the kitchen island. So there was some distance. And I said to her, do I have to fear for my safety? And she says, oh, come on, you're like, what'd she say, 10 feet away. It was more like six, but she could have charged me and assaulted me. Um, Here in Canada, the stats are that uh, police are less likely to lay charges if it's a female aggressor. Males are less likely to report it. Um, I was hoping when this Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial became public that there'd be more talk about men being the victims of
why
violence because sorry.
why don't you think men why don't we talk about this? I mean, you're talking about it now. Why do you think we don't have these conversations?
Well, I moved into a small community and I know how out in this community there's a lot of toxic masculinity still that, suck it up, get over it. Did you punch your back or whatever, things like that. I didn't grow up in that environment. Where I grew up in the environment that people were equal, you have equal respect for each other. Um, so I think it's still, well, I don't want to take it the wrong way. I had a conversation with someone a couple nights ago, um, where had posted a social media news item where a man had taken his life because he was alienated from his kids because of abuse and things. He was out of his marriage and had mental health issues because of that. And I said the courts have to do more to support men. That this happens to men as well. That men need to be seen as equal fathers. Um, Men are not all deadbeats, um, but that's often what you hear. And this girlfriend of my friends had responded as if I was saying it was only men. It's like, no, you don't understand. It's two sides of the same coin, men and women. We have to talk about both. And if men are still afraid to speak out about it for fear of being ridiculed or laughed at for being abused, um, I'll take that on my shoulders. I don't I don't care what others think of me. I know what abuse I went through. I didn't deserve it. My kids didn't deserve it. And I don't want my kids, either one of them, to be abused. I want us to talk about it. I've had coworkers, a number of male coworkers come up to me and tell me they've been abused too after they hear my story. And you wouldn't know it. There's no support groups. Our our support group in my school board is for women. And I tried to inject a male perspective into how we can support everybody, not just the females in the school board. But I was shut down pretty quick.
Now, do
And
you
even
currently have a group of a support group of men that you counsel and work with and coach and teach? I mentioned the fact that you are a public speaker.
not yet. I've been told that's something I should do. And I just noticed today there was a couple men in a town not far from here that are having a support group. So I want to get involved with them. Um, So if it takes me sharing my story, my experience far and wide, I don't care what criticism I'll get. I have to do it because I know there's men out there that are very quiet about what's going on.
Let me peel back another layer to your story. So when you got to a point that you said, enough is enough, I don't want to do this anymore. The divorce process, did she file for divorce? Did you file for the divorce? What was the process like and how were you handled as a male?
I filed for separation after probably less than a year of being out on my own. Um, we were talking in the summer just as I left, and I said, well, maybe, we'll get back together just for the kids. We'll live together. And she had always mentioned staying together until the kids were 18 because her aunt did that and she respected that. Um, and I said, well, if we do that, I need to know your financials. And she said, well, not now, but maybe someday. So I knew she wasn't committed. So I was out. So it was after that that I filed for separation. The first lawyer I talked to said, well, you have just with half of what I told her, she said, you have enough to go for full custody. And she looked at me like I had two heads when I said, I don't want to go for full custody. I want 50-50 because I'm tired of fighting. It was years and years of fighting. It was just had worn me down, and I don't want to spend years in court and finance all my finances in court um, for an unknown outcome. I've been told the courts, because I haven't gone through them, I've been told the courts are still one-sided towards
Now,
females and against
did you
males.
go to an attorney that practiced family law that supported men or just supported divorced women?
She was not particular in who she supported. Um,
Okay, and the reason why
But
I'm asking you that is because one, your reaction is normal to most men. We just wanted to get it over with, and so we settle. What happens in most divorces, especially with females, and please, if you want to condemn me from this, there's stats on this. Okay, so I'm not just talking off the top of my head. Normally, most women going through this, especially when they're supported by lawyers, the lawyers gives them information as to pillage the town. Take as much from this guy as you can get, and whatever, sooner or later he's going to surrender. There's a video out from an attorney from Reno, Nevada. Her name is Marilyn York. She is a men's rights family law out of Reno, Nevada. I'll send you the link. She has 12 females. Her father is the lead attorney on that, and she represents men only going through divorce. And she will say the same thing that I would say, no matter what the outcome or the difference between a male and female, and I guess because of gender and what we're going through, it can happen for the same. It's that a child needs his mother and his father. It wasn't until 2017 that some states, I don't know what it's like in Canada, instituted equal rights for both parents. Normally, before then, it was basically the woman got the rights and the father became a guest. It's also statistics showing that both male and female child, they resolve issues better when they have a mother and father involved in their life than they do growing up in a single family home. They're also the foundation of how they deal emotionally and their mental health is a lot more stable when they have an emotional father and emotional mother involved in their life. So the reason why I'm saying this right now is that to people that are going through this, even though you may not recognize your own, be it male or female, narcissistic behavior. If you withhold emotion, that's abuse to your spouse. If you dominate a conversation and don't resolve issues, that's emotionally damaging on either part. The list can go on and on and on. So the reason why I'm prefacing this is to make sure not only your children, but your ex-wife. And I don't want to take sides because I don't know the whole story. Okay, we're listening to your version of the story. I'm sure if she came on here, she would be saying this and that about you, whatever. But my issue here is that we need a foundation for men, one, to get in touch with their emotions and says, yes, I'm in a relationship that I didn't plan on being in a relationship with. I need to communicate with my partner. And if you have a partner that will acknowledge their own shortcomings and work on it, then you got a relationship that's salvageable. But in the event that you have a relationship that's more damaging emotionally to your mental health as well as your spouse's mental health, it is only good sense and common sense for you to get out. And if you have children involved, put the children's best interest and your behavior towards your children, regardless, you guys hate each other, whatever case may be. Now, the only time this conversation on my end doesn't apply if you guys are physically abusive to each other. Then I say separate the two and put the children in a good situation. But now you are in a thriving relationship. Fast forward to present. We're not going to talk about yesterday. You have now written a couple books and now you're doing workshops. What makes this relationship in present day more stable and more productive than the relationship you had in the past that we've been speaking of? What's
I
different?
can't believe, well, I can't believe how peaceful it is. I'm not being belittled. I'm not being um, uh, trying to provoke me in front of others. It's just a loving, caring relationship where we actually worry about each other's feelings and are concerned for them. It reminds me of my parents' marriage. They knew each other from primary school and were together until they died, and they still loved each other. It's just a very respectful, loving, uh, communicative. Uh, you have to communicate and give and take. And I grew up, it's tough because in those 20 years, I had to put myself first for survival. Um, So it is some days tough for me to remember that I have a partner now, and that I have to put them up there too. Uh, do things for our relationship to keep them healthy. I spent last summer working on my son's car all summer, and um, I missed all that time spending with my partner. And I swore that wasn't going to happen again. So we are making a trip this summer just to keep it healthy. And I think she'd be a wonderful mother. That time has come and gone. Um, but I'm just enjoying the time now.
You
I
can
don't have
always
to worry about. Sorry.
adopt, and if nothing else, you can get a dog.
Yep.
Hopefully a rescue.
Yeah. Yes. Um, yeah. It's like night and day, and I feel like I'm back to where I was in my childhood, where it's safe and consistent, and um, I can predict life, and I don't have to worry about my emotions being off the chart, the way I'm being talked to and being abused, and I just I often think about one whether I should have gotten out of my marriage earlier or not. It's not going to change the fact that I waited around till May 1st, 2019. So I'm
Hey,
just
David,
enjoying life.
I'm going to coach you a little bit. I know people are going to listen and says, Kev, you talk too much. We're going to listen to David, but I'm going to tell you, you got a thriving relationship right now. You need to move on to what was and the things you no longer can control. Remember the four things that I told you would change your life: discuss, decision, desire, and resolve. If you want to move forward, there's a reason why. If you look in your car, if you sit in the front seat of your car, you look in the rear view, look at the mirror that's sitting in your rear view window. That is small. The reason why it's small because everything behind you no longer matters. Now you look to the glass of your window, everything's wide open. That's where your dream and your reality is. Look at the person that you have in your life today and count your blessings. Count your blessings that when she speaks to you, you listen. When she tells you her feelings, you hear her and listen without defending a position of your own. And when you need someone that's in your corner, remember, a woman that respects you loves you. A woman that will not talk ill of you around her friends loves you. A woman that understands that you carry the weight of your world and not position herself over you, she loves you. And when you know that someone loves you, no matter how much hair you have in your head, how tall you've gotten, how big your belly has gotten, and she knows you love her, and you come home, you respect her, you honor her, and you treasure her, and the feelings are mutual, and no one's keeping a scorecard, then you got a relationship worth fighting for, worth building on, that cannot be destroyed. And believe it or not, your children at some point, I don't know how damaged they are by your past relationship. If they have love in their heart, they'll find a way back to their dad. All right. They will find their way back to your dad. And the time that you spent with your son building the car, that is something he's going to do with his son building a car. And your spouse understands how valuable time is because no matter how much money you make or how much you have in your bank account or whatever, the most valuable asset you have and the biggest gift that you have is the experiences and the time that you spend with the people that you love. So, David, how do people get in touch with you? Um, where can we buy your books? Tell us about your books.
I've got a couple compilation stories in the Blue Talk series of books, and I have those links up on my website. And I also have a couple links up to my first time speaking about what I've been through at Cambridge University in the UK.
Well,
I'll
this
have
is
a
going to
link
be
to that.
on a video, and I don't have that information in front of me in your setup. How do they get in touch with? Are you on LinkedIn?
So, So I am on LinkedIn, David Collier, Collier, and all the links will be on my website, dbcollier.com.
All right, we know how to get in touch with you. Is there anything that I did not ask that you need to talk about or would like to talk about advising men? Are there resources that men can go to for counseling that you have access to?
Here in Canada, they're very far and few between. I don't know outside of Canada. Um, there is the father and children homes for abused homes, but they're very few in across Canada. Um, and sadly, there's not enough. I'm definitely going to make a list of what I can and add that to my website as well.
All right, I'm going to, and I'm not being paid for this. For here in the United States, and I'm sure if you contact Miss Marilyn York, attorney at law, specializing in men's rights and family law in Reno, Nevada, I'm sure no matter what state you're in, she probably has a circle or connection of the 12 attorneys that she has working with you, with her that will direct you to the right people in your state in order for you to get the help that you need. So um, that way the system doesn't work against you. Um, she has a TED Talk that is on YouTube. If you look up Marilyn York, and I'll send you the link for that. You don't have to write it down, David. I'll send it to you,
Okay, okay, great.
which is a very impressive speech. And it gives a lot of factual information because, excuse me, to our listeners, for us males, it is hard for us to show up as an emotional male because to most people, and especially women that don't understand, it's looked as a sign of weakness. And even with other men, you know, most of us on the outside looking in will say, well, why did he take it? Why didn't he stand up for himself? Well, a lot of times sensitive men always worry about someone else's feelings and they value other people's feelings, hoping that one day their feelings will get recognized. And then before too long, they've gone 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and maybe 10 years into a relationship. And they find themselves on the edge of the bed with their hands on their head and says, how do I get myself into this situation? And then you find yourself sitting in a garage with your motor running, reading a book. I've been there. Find yourself with a handful of pills, hoping that if you take enough of them, you will pass on in your sleep and it'll be painless. And realizing that the upset stomach you have because your body wants to reject it is part of the torture you're going through as you leave this life. And we don't realize that the conversations we have and trying to save our own life is that sometimes other people's conversations have a lot more power than the truth that we have within our soul. And our children are the victims, and they are, um, you know, fallout of a relationship that wasn't whole from the start. We all see signs that we ignore because we're in love. We all are very hopeful when we take the hand of another person, no matter what their gender is, that it's going to be happily ever after. We fail to realize, just like anything else in life, life is complicated. Never 2 days are alike. No 2 hours, no 60 seconds are any different. It's how we handle these situations. And sometimes when we put our needs before others, we forget that anyone has any other needs than yourself. All right. The reason why I'm talking as much as I'm doing on this interview is because I've talked to David enough, and I know he's still hurting from what his past life has been like. I know that these are triggers for him, and no matter how many times he coaches and teaches whatever, you can't help from being emotional. I was never taught to cry by my father, and I wish I was the man that David is today, that he can express himself the way he has done on this show. And I hope the people that are listening to this and sharing this video, you see a man that's complete today. not a man that's broken from yesterday. David, feel free to correct me for anything I've said.
No, and if I think of anything, if there's anything I could tell someone, male or female, that's having issues in a toxic relationship like this, and they are thinking, why doesn't this person understand what they're going through? Well, the fact is, you can't deal with an irrational person thinking as a rational person yourself. And I had to learn that through the separation process. When I looked at my ex on the screen in my lawyer's office and realized she doesn't get it. She's not rational enough to understand that her lies through the whole process is just dragging this out. It's not doing anything. She's just doing this to hurt others. And meanwhile, it's just coming back on herself. So, and I think listen to your intuition is something I should have paid more attention to when I was in the beginning of this relationship. I don't know if we all have intuition or how strong our intuition is, but I definitely listen to my intuition now, and it's hasn't steered me wrong.
I always tell people to trust your gut. But I know we all get in these situations, and I've seen it with grooms. Just before they say I do, that says I don't know if this is the right thing to do, and because they don't want to face the fallout of being a runaway groom or runaway bride, disappointing all the family members and the friends and the in-laws and whatever. They go through and they stand there and they hold hands and they smile and whatever, knowing that the start of this relationship is also the end of the relationship. And we sit here five
Yeah,
years. I mean, we look at the statistics that over 55% of marriages or end up in divorce courts. Second marriages is 65%. It used to be 50. And the stats that I read today says 55. And that, but I wrote a book called Dating with a Full Deck. One of the things I realized is that the reason why most relationships fail because people don't put in the work. Then some of them fail because of what you've gone through. Now, there's one question I want to ask.
sure.
Can a relationship like yours be fixed and be saved? Or is just the only way out is just to break it up? Your past relationship, not the present. I don't want your
It, yeah, if it's abusive, I'm not sure why you would want to save it.
right.
And it depends on the person whether they're willing to work on it. I tried for many years, and the other half was not willing to. And life, I always say that some days are very, very long, but life is too short. And now that I'm at the place in my life where I am, I don't think I have enough years left in me to explore everything I'm interested in now. I just have a thirst for everything. Life is amazing once you get out of that.
I totally agree. David, I want to thank you for coming on this show and sharing your story. I hope the people that are have listened and tuned in that you at least take one thing away from this. And David, what's the one thing that you think that anyone listening to your interview should take away? If there's one thing, if there's two, go for
I don't want to be too specific about it, but or too, I don't know, too flippant about it, but put yourself first. Um, Not that everybody should come after, but if you're not healthy, if you're not happy, then things have to change. Um, and also, you can't change anybody else, but you can change how you react to somebody else. And I was thinking, I work with a lot of young kids and I see the generational abuse continuing from the families that they have and things that they say and act now, the young kids. And I think we got to stop that somehow, and we can have amazingly rewarding life and raise healthy, adjusted, well-adjusted children. And I think we owe it to them.
All right. All right. So, David, I want to thank you for coming on the show. We've covered a lot of information, and I hope at some point our listeners have been enlightened, um, have been aware, and show up present in their own life. And the other thing is know your honesty. There's a book called Known Honesty. I suggest that you read. Grace Gavin wrote that. There's another book that I would say is Gap in the Game by Dan Sullivan, which another one you should read. The other is by Mel Robinson, Just Let Them. I think you should read. And if you're in this state, in this present state, whatever, I would support you on your advice is to put yourself first. But the whole thing about everything is communication if you've been open and honest. If you like what you heard, you can watch this video on RMK Productions and Network on our YouTube page. If you want to email us or make a comment, go to our website. It's rmkproductions.org. You can email us there and go from there. The other thing is, I'm going to say this, to grow, you must make some mistakes. And I hope that, David, you're in your present situation that you are growing and thriving. To have confidence, you must address your anxieties. To forgive yourself, and this is the reason why I said you've got to lean hard in the space of resolve. You got to hold yourself accountable. Take ownership of the role that you played in your relationship and not continue to carry your story forward, casting blame. It takes two people to enter, it takes two people to exit. It takes one person in order to end the conversation of two people that want something to change. If you want something to change, you've got to be the first victim of change, be the example of what change looks like. And then when you get to a point that people don't recognize it, trust your gut, cut your ties and move on. So when I say to exist, you must show up more today than you did yesterday. And I'm hoping that your present situation thrives. I hope that your children come around and they find out and find love for their dad and live in the moment because, neither one of us have 30 years in front of us. All right. We just have today. The 86,400 seconds that we have in a day, that's all we got. And I hope your children, when they listen to this, understand moments do matter. Understand power of your words. Speak positive affirmations, set realistic goals, hug more than you yell, kiss without cause, and be kind just because. For me, this is coming from the mindset master that people call me. This is what I do. My grandfather said, when you get to a place in life that you can help someone else out, it is your duty to do so. He said, reach one, teach one. And with that said, I'm Kevin Macklem, your show host, and we're out.